Welcome to another episode of Elementality, everybody. I'm your host, Reese Harper, here with my co-host, Carl Richards, America's financial advisor. Like to welcome you back to the show, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I thought that was Susie Orman.
No,
or Dave Ramsey.
She's America's financial
Guru,
I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're different.
Yes, they are different.
Yeah.
They are different.
Do you still keep a securities license, by the way?
I know. I have my CFP though.
Oh, nice.
I just did my
renewal. Yeah.
Continue,
I don't have a
yeah.
securities license either.
I almost
anymore.
forgot. I was literally up until midnight getting my continuing ed done for CFP.
Did you go like the financialadvisor.com website and do all those quizzes?
I don't talk about that.
Oh, what about Michael has you're supposed to go to Michael's website, I think, and do all that.
Yeah, I don't talk about that.
He's not going to get me to spend money.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Shout out to Michael. He doesn't listen to this. Yeah. He's too busy.
Yeah.
He might listen to you. All right.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So today's episode we're really excited about because it has to do with really discovering how to get your client to buy in to you and your plan and your advice. Really kind of diving past the surface level of kind of a functional plan and the surface level of kind of like courtesy, like a high level friendship, and really get down into deep alignment with your client. I wanted to ask you, if you're going to give a young financial advisor advice on how to get past the point, of surface level and get down to what really matters, helping them feel okay, what's your, couple pieces of advice you're thinking of?
Yeah. The challenge is we all want to help. And so the moment that something shows up, so prospective client comes in, sits down, the moment they mention anything that we can help with, we want to jump in there. Michael Bungay-Stainer, who goes by MBS, he's a coach, and he calls it the advice monster. Like the moment there shows anything we can help with, the advice monster comes out and we just want to give advice. and he suggests just stay curious a little longer. Right? Curious now, advice later. It'll matter later. But the problem is your advice is no good because it's not about the right thing. Right? Unless we take the time to really understand what the right thing is. And if we can just believe, it was hard medicine for me to take. Like, your advice is no good, Carl. Your advice is no good. Because it's not about the right thing. Like, if it was about the right thing, this stated problem and this piece of advice is a match. So it's not that your advice is no good. It's just that it's no good because that wasn't actually the problem.
Okay.
Right? That wasn't actually the problem. So ask really good questions. Like, I have a list of favorite questions that I would just ask over and over and over. Listen and stay super curious. And realize that you're wrong. You're wrong. Your advice is no good. The best people I know in this kind of a profession, one of my good friends, Jennifer Garvey Berger, she is like Harvard PhD executive coach to 20 of the Fortune 100 executive, like serious business. And we used to go on. I had this program in London called Carl. Nobody knew that this was the name of it, but it was called Carl Walks with Smart People.
Okay.
So every week I try and go on a walk with a smart person.
Okay.
And London's a place you can do that because there's lots of smart people there. So Park City, it was much easier in London than Park City. So I used to go on walks with Jennifer every once in a while when I'd have something I needed to work out, and I would watch her. This is one of the smartest people I know, who's most capable of giving me advice than almost anybody, because her domain expertise is right in line with mine. And I would ask her a question, and she would never answer it. Never. She'd always ask me a question back, like, what have you seen? Oh, what have you tried? Oh, that's interesting. When did you first think about that? And when she would ask me a question, she would literally look like a golden retriever who had just dropped a ball at your feet. Like, she was so excited about what was going to happen next because she didn't know. Are you going to pick the ball up and throw it? What do you get? So excited. And I asked her about that once. She's like, well, because I'm not interested in asking questions that I know the answer to. Like, that's pretty, I'm not interested in asking questions I'm only interested in asking questions that I don't know the answer to. And so she was so curious about what was going to come out of my mouth in answer to the question she asked. And I would always solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
She would always solve the problem by helping me by just asking great questions. So ask really good questions, stay curious longer, right? And one of my favorite questions, it's always the follow-up ones. And Michael Bungay Stainer has another one called, and what else?
Yeah.
And what else?
Isn't that, okay, so that, I didn't realize when you first said his name that was the person that I read a book called The Coaching Habit.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And I was like,
Yeah,
I remember, I forgot his name.
Yeah, yeah.
But the set of questions in that book I felt like were really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Let's share with the audience like one question out of that, because and what else is kind of a follow up. What's one question that you kind of like, either from that book or just one in general that you like?
Yeah, I mean, like prospective client meetings for me always started the same way. So I took Bill Bacharach, John Bowen and Bill Bacharach argue a little bit about who created this question, I think, but I think it's pretty obvious. I actually have no idea, but I first learned it from Bill Bacharach, and then I also learned it from John Bowen, which is just the simple what's important about money to you. And even as I say that, like, we have to realize when you ask a really good question, it's by definition a question that people haven't been asked before. And so it's often going to be uncomfortable asking it. And it's going to feel uncomfortable because by definition it will be new and novel, right? The person won't have had the experience. So I love to blend that with Simon Sinek's work, and I would just ask, why is money important to you? Mm-hmm. Dan Sullivan's question, he wrote a book called The Dan Sullivan Question. If we were meeting 3 years from today, what would have to happen in order for you to consider this relationship a success? And that's a great question. But those questions aren't nearly as important as, oh, that's interesting, tell me more, after the first answer. Oh, really? Go deeper.
Yeah.
What
are we trying to discover, right? Like, I think it's one thing to say, I've got the right question. I know how to get them to continue to sort of explore. What are you trying to discover through any one of these questions? Where are you trying to arrive at?
Yeah. So maybe it's like, let's back up to an episode, a little episode or two ago. Somebody comes in with an acute problem.
Yep.
Right. The portfolio is blown up. Or I'm really upset about my performance has been bad. All my buddies are talking about great performance. Well, we're trying to, we can compete at that level. And I always felt like I was really good. Like I could compete. I did some institutional consulting. Like I can compete at that level. But we know anytime we win a client at that level, we will lose the client at that level a couple years later, right? Mm-hmm. Like any client we win based on performance, we'll lose based on performance later. So we're really trying to get underneath why is that actually important. And let me just tell you one quick story that might help. I have a friend, his name's, I can use his, anyway, let's just call him Aaron. And Aaron was telling me about how it was really driving him crazy because his wife, and I want to be really clear, this is not a wife spends money, husband doesn't. This just happens to be this example. I'm so nervous now about gender things after all the New York Times articles. I had to always be thinking about it. So I please don't get distracted by the gender here, because it could easily just be flipped. But so Aaron was telling me one day, he was like, gosh, my wife really wants to get a new car. It's been going on for a year. She won't stop bringing up the car. And he's like, I don't understand, because she doesn't seem to care about, we don't live in the flashiest neighborhood. We don't have to have the best clothes. I don't understand what the car, it's caused major fights. Mm-hmm. He called me a couple weeks later. We talked about it a little bit. He called me a couple weeks later. He's like, you won't believe what happened. I decided just to ask, hey, what's going on here with the car? Why do you want a new car so bad? And she was like, oh, I don't want a new car. She's like, look, growing up, my dad always drove old, unreliable cars. And I remember in junior high, pulling up to the junior high school, all my friends, I get out of the car and it breaks down. My dad can't start it to leave. I remember breaking down out in the countryside somewhere. I mean, I almost get emotional thinking about this just because this was 20 years of and she said, I'm sorry, Aaron, I didn't mean new. I meant reliable. That's what we're trying to get at. is like, well, how would we have known that when we just like build a plan off buying a new car?
Yeah.
Well, we didn't know because we didn't ask enough questions. So we're trying to get to the problem is never the problem.
Yeah. Well, so I think underlying this, you talk a lot about statement of financial purpose. You talk about finding your purpose with money. Why is money important to you? It seems like for you, it's about arriving at this place where you're able to define why money is important to you. And that's the question you would ask in order for someone to arrive at this statement of financial purpose. Is that fair? Or how would you, coach someone on that?
Well, I mean, I think even like, just to get clear, like, this isn't a new agey concept. Like for me, my statement of financial purpose is time with my family, mainly outside, and service in my church and my community.
Mm-hmm.
We had a great client. His name was Jerry. He was of Tom Brokaw's Greatest Generation. This is all duty, right? And so his statement, when I asked him, Jerry and Vera, why is money important to you? They said, I never want to be a burden to the kids. To me, the reason that line of questioning is so important is out of that flows goals. Before that, goals are like picked out of the air. We don't know what our goals are. Nobody likes to be asked what their goals are. Like the research is pretty clear. So I can now say to Jerry, what if we put some framework around I don't want to be a burden to the kids? Like what would that look like? What would it mean? Right? So I'm directly linking their goals. And I would say to Jerry, if we put some framework around this, and after we put some framework around it, would it be okay, Jerry, if we call that a goal? So I would never ask, what is your goal? I would teach them what it meant to have a goal.
Through an extension, through
From
understanding that purpose first.
Yeah, so goals flow out of purpose. And then what's beautiful about this, the reason this all matters, I mean, of course it matters for its own reason, but is out of purpose flows portfolio, like the plan, the design, like how are we going to invest the money to help you meet those? Out of purpose flows goals. Out of goals flows the tactical work that we're doing. So he may have come in for performance. We have no idea. That's not linked. His prior advisor did not link that to, I never want to be a burden to the kids. Turns out that means $7,000 a month in my mailbox on the first of the month, right? And then we can say, oh, great, we'll build a portfolio based on that. And the reason all that matters is because when this portfolio has its normal tough time, which is where my work always had started in the first place, was how do I solve behavioral mistakes way out here, right? Way out in the portfolio. I can say, hey, Jerry, remember, let me just check. And we can whoop all the way back to purpose, then to goals, and remind them of the link. So that's why it matters.
Let's just do a quick exercise then. I'm a prospect, or I'm a new client. We got a great relationship. I'm in the office. You're trying to ask me this. You're trying to try to help me get to a statement of financial purpose. I've actually been trying to write this down lately, and I don't know what mine is.
Well, I mean,
what question would you ask?
Pretend like we're not in the middle of recording a podcast and we are just having a conversation at a coffee shop, right? Like, and we're just relaxed, and you're like, look, I'm starting this new company, and you tell me something about it, and I would just be like, oh man, that sounds really interesting. How's it going?
Okay. Well, I've got a lot going on, it seems like. So this is like, it's a whole new thing on my plate, but I'm just really excited about, my life. I'm excited about where it's going. I feel like I have a lot of great things going on. I get energized, by a lot of things that are going on in my day. That's probably what I would say. Like now.
Why? I mean, I was curious. You mentioned like a lot of things on my plate.
Yeah.
Like it sounds like that's like juggling. I'm imagining plates being juggled. Like, why was it important to you to add one more thing to that list? Because I know you've got a busy family life and the kids, and I know that's important to you. You've told me that in past conversations.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
I think I saw this gap, this problem in the world, which was all these advisors, all these great influencer advisors and coaches and people like John Bowen and people like Bill Bachrock and people I feel like there's a lot of good advice out there on how to make a better business that kind of focuses on values. Talking to whether it's George Kinder or, Amy Mullen or, all the life planning kind of dimensional stuff, I could feel like the money was really important. I saw that the American Psychology Association ranked money really high. It's number 1 or 2. But like all the tools and technology that I was using in my practice were just like really reinforcing they weren't reinforcing values. They weren't reinforcing these conversations around emotional jobs that I wanted to get done. And I was just like, man, I got to try. Like if I'm not willing to try to put a pragmatic thing together, like a pragmatic framework together, something to try to put all of these ideas into practice, I don't know if I would like feel like I had really pushed myself that far, you know, like it would have been easier just to be like, not me. Like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
But I was also like, if I don't do it, then who will? Like, who's going to go raise the capital? Who's going to put the team together? Who's going to like orchestrate all this? And I was like, I got to try. You know, I got to give it a shot. Because then I could
But
at least.
you got to try to solve this problem.
Got to solve this problem. If it doesn't work out, then I'm okay. It's not like I'm like I could live with failing and having tried. But I don't think I could like look at myself 10 years from now, look back and go, you saw something you could fix and you had a shot, but you just didn't take it.
Yeah.
That would have been like, I couldn't live with that. And so why was like, I just wanted to be able to look at my future self in the mirror and be like, you tried, you did a good job. You put yourself out there and you took the risk and you tried to make the industry better. I was just sick of seeing like client after client
making
after client.
the industry better.
Yeah.
Is that really what it's about, making the industry better? Why is that?
I think it was like helping
important?
I think it was about helping like one more client better. You know, just one that I wanted the next client experience I had to just be that much more impactful for them.
Yeah. And
the current like infrastructure I was working with was just like not
right.
I wasn't able to get there.
So making the industry better is really just a tool to make one more client better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything more important about the work you're doing than that?
I guess I've seen like in my own life, like getting to a place where it took a lot of great coaches like you. It took a lot of great, took my wife, my kids, my friends to like help me get to that place where I really found like I was happy. And it was funny because I'm not still, you know, I have a large net worth, but I'm not financially, you know, I'm not liquid financial independent. You know, I still have to execute in order for me to be like, according to the TT score and financial independence definitions, to be like totally done. Yeah. But I was going towards more money for quite a while in my early career. Yeah. But then learning about this balance of all these things that I needed gave me that sense of presence and kind of like happiness where I was like, dude, I don't need any more money. Like I'm done. Yeah. And I still don't have as much as I would need to for the math to be like totally optimal, but I'm done. Like I found that really zone of genius, like centeredness, ikigai moment. And I was like, oh, I wish someone could have helped me find that earlier. Like it didn't need to be this burdensome. It didn't need to be this heavy. It could have been more enjoyable in my 20s, more enjoyable in my 30s, so that you just didn't, you weren't focused on wealth maximization as kind of the impetus for everything. Yeah. So if you say like, was it about one more client? Was that what it was about? It's not about the industry. It's about that one more client. I think for me, it was like the things that helped me heal, the things that helped me kind of find peace. It was like, dude, can financial planning maybe help a few more people? But it's always about that one person, that next person just having a little bit better interaction with their financial advisor so that they find that balance sooner. And live more of their life in that rich, kind of full, centered, kind of peaceful, enjoyable place of enjoyment. And it just doesn't have to do with wealth maximization. It never was about that. You know, that's for me like so I don't know if we're getting at it. Maybe I'm tangentially.
I mean, I think, you know, if I hear you correctly, you saw a problem. It was important to try and solve it. It was really important to you to be able to look back and say, I think the words you used were like, at least I gave it a shot. To change an industry, and as a tool to help one more human, right, live better with money, so that you could get to this place where you felt like, hey, I'm really balanced. Like I'm doing all. Is there anything more important than that?
I think for that's probably the most important thing, to get myself to a place where I was living my best life, feeling that balance for myself.
Yeah.
It required all of this.
Sure.
All this had to be there.
Yeah.
I can't remove my, work in my nonprofit. I can't remove my work in my dentist advisor's career. I love working with my clients still. I love the software startup. I love working with you. I love recording content. Like, I love being with my kids. I love spending time with my wife on the weekends. I love traveling. Like, all the things in my life that are kind of that balance, they all had to be there. And this part that I'm working on now is like one of them that gave me the balance. And, without, not very many people actually get to know me that well, like you just did, right? To dive into there and go like, that seems like I know you pretty well.
Well, that, what was the word you used for that? The Japanese word for it?
Ikigai.
So like,
it means life value or purpose of life in Japanese.
Well, so like to hit kind of pause, right? Like if we had gone through that conversation as a first meeting, I would now know that, like, I would have that written down, right? That I saw a problem I wanted to solve. I really didn't want to look back. I mean, and again, I think important to use your words. A problem I wanted to solve. I really didn't want to look back and have not given it a shot. I changed the industry so that one more client, right? And I would be tempted to change that to one more human, but I wouldn't even do that because you use the word client. One more client, so that I could get to this ikigai. Is that the right word? Right? For me personally, like, all those things are serving this one purpose. Well, now I could easily say, well, Reese, geez, now that I know that helps me a lot with financial planning questions.
For you.
I can now.
And you can reflect that back to me, and you frame it and you write it down and you go, okay, it's kind of that. I think that's right, but I might change the definition just slightly and say,
you as the client,
me as the client might say, finding my own ikigai that's my life purpose.
Well, yes,
right?
the thing that sits at the top of all that.
Yes.
There's nothing more important than that.
No, that's it.
Yeah. So once
I would say that the first draft that you just gave me to define that helped me kind of look at it and go, that's one dimension of finding my ikigai, but it is about these, like, people want to have an impact, make a difference. Work is a part of it, but it was really more about my own personal balance, so that every day I could kind of stay in my own, sense of peace, right, and balance.
Totally. So I would have that written as a statement of financial purpose that maybe just ended with, your statement of financial purpose could be one word. Yeah. Right? Like, it could be just ikigai.
Yeah.
Right. And then I could say, okay, what conditions need to exist in order for you to feel like you have the ability to pursue that?
Yeah.
What would you need to be making income wise? What would you need to be? And we can then, and Reese, would it be okay when I ask you these questions, we'll put some definition around that and we'll call it a goal.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's how, but I want to keep asking those questions. Like, cause again, client come, I need 3.2 million for retirement. I've had that happen. We've all had that happen. Client had a number in their head. Well, I can just write down that number and go, okay, cool. And I can go straight into tools to make you have that happen. But where did that number come? So I would be so curious. Like, that's really interesting, Reese. Yeah. 3.2 million. How did you come with that number? Walk me through that a little bit. Like, I'm super curious. These are some of the lines. Like, I'm using this intentionally. I'm super curious about that. Tell me more.
Yeah.
All right. And then we get behind, it turns out my dad said that one time, and I don't even know if it's right. And, that's the thing.
So to go back, I appreciate you going through that example. I think it's instructive for people to kind of see, like, a real response from somebody like me trying to go through that exercise with a real talented, advisor. Yeah. What's the main benefit that just occurred, in that relationship, right? What do you think? If you're my financial advisor and I'm your client, what just happened in that exchange? Like, for me as a client?
At least I've read about the science behind this. Like, what actually, I believe what happened is that you got asked really good questions. Somebody was intensely interested. There was a feeling of empathy and connection. That feeling of empathy and connection is not woo-woo. Yeah. It's literally oxytocin, not oxytocin. Oxytocin, not Oxycontin. Oxytocin being released in your brain, which was designed for me to have feelings of fondness for somebody who appeared to be interested in me. Yeah. Like, that's a deeply, biological thing issue that just happened. And that happens when people ask you really good questions and listen intently. And then they help you define, The other thing that we know just happened is you're making a decision about whether or not you're going to hire me or continue to pay me as your advisor. And the decision you're making, you don't know this, but the decision you're making is the way you value me. And again, you don't know this, but we know this from the science. The way you value me, the calculation you do is desired future state discounted for uncertainty. So you've got a desired future state, and then you discount my value by the uncertainty you have in my ability to get you there. If we haven't even defined the desired future state, your discount's pretty high.
Yeah.
Right? The uncertainty is pretty high.
You meaning the desired future state when it doesn't involve getting down to that purpose level.
Yep.
You're starting from a weak place.
Yeah, and I could come up with if I didn't know about Ikigai, I could come up with all sorts of tactical things. And you would probably be like, I don't know. But if I can link those tactical decisions to this sense of purpose that you've now defined, I say, look, based on everything I know about you, the best way to get there, the best way to continue to live there is to do this thing first and then this thing and this thing. How does that feel? Yeah, great. Like there's a direct link between the things we're doing. We've now aligned your use of capital with what is actually important to you. And the defining of what's actually important to you, I used to think that was the easy part. It turns out that's really hard.
It's really hard. You could see, I mean, I've gone through kind of a lot of self-discovery of this. And so for me, it's like, it's even though I'm fairly self-aware, it's still hard.
This drifting off course.
Yeah.
And the gap between what I said was important to me and what I'm actually doing with my life. Like I love the checkbook and the calendar never lie, right? Like if my checkbook and calendar aren't lined up with what I say is important to me, that's actually just called being human.
Yeah.
And entering that space is a really, really valuable thing that we can do carefully. And nobody walks in the door hiring you for that. Yeah. We just walk through why it's so important to tie it back to that tactically.
Yeah. All right, Carl, thanks so much, man. This is a blast and really talented at helping people understand this. Got a big heart, and you put it all out there for people, so I really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to having another episode soon.